Hello and welcome to Morning Brew. I hope you can hear me. Hope you can see me. If you can't see me, you can't hear me, let me know in the chat, because I think I can see that. Hi number 3, hi Plum, hi David, and hi Ben, who are already here. Thank you for joining us today on Friday the 7th of April 2023. So if you were all caught up last night, I had a chat with trans rights activist Katie Montgomery, and that was really good. That was a bit of a last minute thing that got organised between me and Katie, and I think it went really well. And I've asked Katie to come back on as a guest on future shows, and she's agreed. So that's good. That's good. But yeah, I don't really know what I'm going to talk about today, because we've had such a massive week of these big political explosions on both sides of the Atlantic, and now it's kind of Friday, and it's Good Friday, and everyone's off work, and it's actually sunny today. It's actually nearly warm here in Durham. But yeah, we've also got Cathal is there as well. Hi, happy Easter. Good Friday to you all. Hope you have some hot cross buns ready. So there's a couple of things that I just wanted to have a quick chat about, and honestly, put stuff in the chat, right? Keep me going, because this is going to be quite a chatty one, all right? I'm not going to go off on a big mad rant about one thing for 20 minutes like I sometimes do. So first of all, there's been an attack ad put out by Labour saying that Rishi Sunak wants to stop, well, not stop, but he doesn't want to put child sex offenders into jail, which is the kind of attack ad that you'd expect from the Tories. And there's been a lot of pushback about this, most notably one of the Labour front bench, Lucy Powell. She's actually wouldn't back it. She was asked numerous times. She did say it was not to everyone's taste. But what we're going to see when the election actually, gets into gear, it's going to be pretty horrible with the stuff that the Tories are going to come out with. So I can see we're at least a year away from the next general election. I guess this is just Labour sort of testing the ground, see what they can get away with, see what they can't get away with. But you've always got that thing that the left always feel this need to be nice and to be fair, whereas the other side don't care. There's a great movie, I've mentioned it before, Powell and Pressburger's The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp from it was made, I think, just after the Second World War, because I always thought it was made during the war. Maybe it was made during the war. Anyway, Winston Churchill hated it. It got edited to hell. The director's cut only came out in the 1980s. But essentially, there's a scene in which the good guys, the British troops, say to their superiors, we have to start fighting dirty because the Germans are fighting, well, the Nazis are fighting dirty, and if we don't win this, there ain't going to be a rematch next year. Like the cricket. So yeah, it was really good. Jim Bob saying, hi Graham, enjoying the increased output. Great. I'm glad you are, Jim Bob. Yeah, something else I just wanted to mention quickly before I forget. I have launched the Patreon for Labour Social, patreon.com/Labour Social, easy to remember. And if you are already a patron, don't do anything. If you're already a patron of mine, you've already got access to Discord server, you're already going to get invites to any of the Labour Social socials that we put together over the next few months. So don't worry about that. You just hang fire. Even if you're on the lowest rung, you'll still get that for being an early, what's it called? Early riser? No, that's not early bird. For being an early bird, there's a special early bird offer. But if you're not currently subscribed as a patron to my channel, head over to patreon.com/Labour Social. There's about 5 different tiers there that you can take part in, and you can really get involved in making Labour Social a success. Like I say, we are a year away from the general election. The mission here is for us lot, right? You watching this, me, all the other influencers that I know, to work together, to work with the Labour Party, so when they get into power next year, we're in a position to have conversations with them that they may not otherwise have. And I'll give you a really good example of this. When I was at the Fabian conference a couple of months ago, I spoke to Seb Dance, who was an MEP. He was a Labour MEP back in the Brexit war days. And yeah, great days. And he's now Deputy Mayor for Transport for London. And I was talking to him about the bus station in London, the fact that there's only one bus station servicing not just London, like I'm talking about the whole country, where the National Express buses go, where the Megabus buses go, where the Flix buses go. And it's not just our country, it's also from all over Europe. And you've got these coaches coming from the Channel Tunnel, fighting their way along the South Circular to get to the centre of London every day. Literally over 1,000 buses, and you've got this bus station. There's only one of them, and it was built in the 30s. It's too small, it's dangerous, it's polluted, it's squalid. Much better idea, have a bus station in the north near Brent Cross, the end of the M1, have one at Heathrow, have one at Gatwick, and when you buy your Megabus ticket or your National Express ticket, it comes with a free ride on the Underground, because all of those are attached to the actual train system in London. So yeah, they work with TfL to make sure that these dirty, polluting diesel coaches are not driving down Oxford Street. Driving down Oxford Street, it just Oxford Street should be pedestrianised. Never mind. Anyway, Seb said to me, "You're the first person to say this to me." And I was gobsmacked. I was like, how? The what? You know, like, you're the deputy mayor of TfL, and no one's pointed out how bad the infrastructure is for the people like myself who can't afford the £300 return ticket to London now. Yeah, honestly, go check it out. Go after this. You know, while you listen to James O'Brien, go on your phone or on your internet and just look up how much it is from Durham to London now on the train, the return. Oh my God! Oh my God! I've flown to Australia for less money. Not even kidding. So anyway, the reason why I'm saying this is that a lot of these politicians, you know, they're all right. They're not lunatics like the Tories, and they generally mean well. And I want to have a situation where we, you watching this, and me, and the people that we know, are able to put this stuff to Labour politicians who will be in power next year to say, have you thought about this? Yeah, it's not exactly lobbying like oil. Here you go. Here's $1 million to do what we want you to do. Dance, little monkey, dance. No, it's more like, yeah, it's more like just a softly spoken thing, but just pointing things out. And if I've said this once, I've said it 1,000,000 times. Do not exaggerate. No, if I said it once, I've said it 1,000,000 times. People don't know things until it's pointed out to them. And we have a thing called the what's the term for it? It's like the curse of knowledge. That's the term. The curse of knowledge. And what this is there was an experiment done, and it was very simple. They had to clap out a tune on their hands, and they went like, and they were told what the tune was, and it was, and then they had to go to other people and clap out that tune, clap out that rhythm, and say, what is this song from? What's that song? And because I know that it's the beginning of Happy Birthday to You, that's all I can hear when I do that. Other people can't hear what I'm hearing. They don't know. They don't have that knowledge. And so when you do that, it just sounds like some claps. When people were asked how many people they thought would guess correctly that was Happy Birthday to You, the respondents came back so 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50%. They said that people will get it. It's so obvious. It's so obvious to you now. You know what it is. I know what it is. It's so obvious. And when the data came back, it was like 1% of people got it because they didn't have that priming knowledge. And so that's the point of Labour Social, really, in a nutshell. It's our job to point stuff out that some politicians who may well be in government next year might not actually know about or have thought about or have discussed on TV, because all we ever talk about in TV and the newspapers is absolute nonsense, culture war, BS. And yeah, the real discussions that we need to be having about our lives, society, community, our integration with the rest of our relationship with the rest of Europe, our relationship with the rest of the world, also massively green policy and what we need to do to just try and make it so the world is still a habitable place by the end of the century. You know, when a lot of people's children who are around today are probably still going to be alive. And we don't want their autumn years to be absolutely horrific with mass migration around the world where people just can't stay where they are because the climate has changed and it's just uninhabitable. You look at where people live around the world, they don't live in the Sahara Desert. There's hardly anyone there. You see a picture of the Earth from space and at night, and you've got all the lights. There's a big dark space, a big dark banned across Africa, and it's the Sahara Desert. No one lives there. It's uninhabitable. Oh, but Graham, nomads lived there. Yeah. There's wanderers in the desert. They live in and it's like, yeah, there's like literally a handful, and there's not enough nutrients and water in the actual deserts to sustain more than just literally a handful of people who live that nomadic life still to this day. Anyway, back into the chat. I said I wasn't going to go off on one, and I did. Sorry. Just hearing Trump's Truth Social, maybe on life support as investigation stall a buyout. I heard a funny story about Truth Social. So what happened a couple of weeks ago was that, do you remember when TikTokers got people to buy tickets for Trump's rally and no one turned up? Do you remember that? Yeah. During the run-up to the 2020 presidential election. Well, this time they all joined. Someone went on Truth Social and they saw that you only needed like 100 truths or tweets, whatever they call it, in order to become a trending topic. So he told everyone to just make an account and write DeSantis for president or whatever the hashtag was, and yes, it started to trend, and he was like, you know that Trump will see this because it'll come up when he's like tweeting away or writing all caps, it's so unfair, why is people which I thought was hilarious. So yeah, Truth Social seemed like a good idea at the time. But what's interesting as well in America is that the more and if anyone watched the TV show Andor, they're going to get onto this straight away. The more that the empire or the Republicans close their fist around abortion rights, reproduction rights, trans rights, the trying to give everyone an AR-15 at birth, trying to dial back democratic voting rights for people. Every time they take a step in this direction, they lose more votes. I mean, the core love it, but that's only 20% of the electorate. It's only 20% that are like absolutely hardcore. You can't argue with these people. The vast majority are either Democrats or independents or moderate Republicans. And if you look at something like abortion, time and time again, we see in polls in America that over 75% of Americans support the right of a woman to choose what she does with her own body. And yet, now that Roe versus Wade has been taken off the table, so there's no federal protection to have abortions, all these states have got these really horrific laws going into place, which are just, I mean, beyond. I'm not going to talk about it because it's a bit early, and literally every one of these so far has been flagged by YouTube as inappropriate for advertising. So I'm on my best behavior. I'm on my absolute best behavior today. But yeah, Truth Social, great. Yeah, Trump, yeah, great. Another thing is like the same people have been going on and on and on about locking Hillary Clinton up. Lock her up. We want justice to be done. And then they're going on about they want to lock Joe Biden up because of Hunter Biden's laptop. I don't even know what was on Hunter Biden's laptop, but apparently it's a big issue. It's a big thing. And it's like, so you want the justice system to work for the people that you don't like, but you don't want it to work for the person that you like. What? Unreal. Anyway, just fight. A lot of Tories have weak-looking chins anyway. Oh, God, especially Cruella Braverman. Where's your chin, Cruella? And what's his name? The one who went to jail, Andrew Tate. He's got no chin. He's just like a chinless wonder. He's just like, yeah, I've got all these cars. I'm like, you got all those cars, but you don't have a chin. I believe in fairness. Borrow in fairness. But I'm not always nice, says number 3. I believe in fairness as well. But, you know, I think I'd be, if I was a villain, if it was a cartoon supervillain, I'd always give the heroes a chance. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't just shoot them on sight. Mr. Bond, I've been expecting you. Bang, dead. Short movie. I would, you know, give them a little bit of a fighting chance to escape my vile clutches. Yeah, for the sport of it, because you'd get bored, wouldn't you, once you're taking out all the superheroes? What would you do? David says, Graham watched a documentary from Stephen Fry. He spoke to Bolsonaro about homophobia. Bolsonaro was homophobic 4 years ago, and now, yeah. Bolsonaro is a nightmare. Also, another nightmare over in Italy, Silvio Berlusconi. Last I heard, he was on life support. Oh, dear. How sad. Never mind. You're all right for a bit this morning. No James O'Brien today. Oh yeah, it's good. He's having a day off. I'm not having a day. Look at that. That's dedication. That is. I'm here. Head over to patreon.com/ /Labour Social. Get on it. Graham, are there still logistic problems in supermarkets? It's died down a bit, but I find that when I do my weekly shopping, I mean, I shop at Lidl, so I don't think that Lidl have been affected by the shortages quite as much, although it was quite bad in February when I turned up once and it's like there was this whole area where the fruit and veg should be and there was like one cabbage just left. But no, it's not been too bad. It's just one of those things that like in Europe they have we used to have, and in the EU they have the Common Agricultural Policy, which is set up so that you don't have shortages, so that the olive harvest in, I don't know, Greece doesn't work one year, or is bad. Maybe you can get some olives from Italy instead. You can resource from somewhere else. Whereas it's all quite clever the way it works. But whereas we used to be able to do that, we have taken out all of the buffer for any supply shocks that come along by Brexiting. Also, the buffer for not having mad queues leaving the UK. I mean, last week, I don't know what it's like today, but like last week was just insane with people waiting 12 hours to get on a ferry, and it was because they had to check every single passport. And then these lying sons of people who aren't very nice were on TV saying it's nothing to do with Brexit. But before Brexit, they didn't have to check everyone's passport, and now they do. So it's absolutely 100%. It is Brexit. That's it. Yeah, but the French should do more. Why? No, why? Tell me now. The French should do more. Why should the French taxpayer have to pay for our stupidity? Why should the French taxpayer have to pay because we decided to leave the EU, the most successful trading union ever in the history of mankind? And then we entered another one on the other side of the world, which has got 11 members. And they're like, it's worth 11 billion if you add 11 trillion, if you add all the economies together. And you're like, that's just the maddest way to look at something. It's just like, that's the economies all put together, right? Yeah. That's not how much trade we're going to get from them. Because I'll say it again, they're on the other side of the world. 10,000 miles away, and it is a long way to walk, believe me. 300 for a train to London. Bloody hell, you can buy a flight to Spain and a hotel with that. Yeah, I know. I was saying for 2 trips to London, I could fly to Panama and spend a year on my island, living off coconuts and fish and casaba. I'm good, thanks. Waiting for the temperature to rise a bit, go do some gardening. Yes, that would be good today. I think it looks like a good gardening day as long as it gets a bit warmer. My local Aldi is less affected by shortages than my local Morrison's. The latter, you can see the shortages in chicken, for example. The Aldi has no such issues. Yeah, I haven't had that much of an issue with Lidl, but I've got to say, like, every week when I go shopping, I have a list that my beloved partner Catherine gives me, and there's always something that I can't get now. It used to be like staples, just like, get the same thing every week, but there's some things in there. Super chat. Oh, thank you very much. That's from Canal for 20 Singaporean dollars. Say what you want. Offset demonetization. Well, that's one of the reasons why I'd like everyone to head over to Patreon and get onto the Patreon thing. Yeah, please get onto Patreon. Yeah, hopefully that will bring in enough money for me not to have to worry about advertising on individual videos. Although talking to Phil Morehouse, he's just like, make 2 videos a day, Graham. Just make 2 videos. Script them, say them to camera, talk about what's going on. But at the same time, I know that Phil does that, and also Max does his videos where he responds to something stupid that some idiot said, or something that's happened in the news, and he'll play the clip and then he'll comment on it. So I feel like adding my voice to theirs in that way wouldn't really achieve much. You'd just be watching the same kind of content again. So I'm trying to think pretty hard about like how I could make a couple of episodes a day for Labour Social talking about stuff which wouldn't necessarily tread on the toes of me mates who do similar stuff. Do you know what I mean? So any ideas? Put them in the chat. Turns out people like their freedom of movement. Who knew? Says Yoni. Yeah. Turns out that was a good thing. But the government were like, we're ending freedom of movement for you all, you plebs, you oiks. I got another super chat from David Faulkner. This is from Hong Kong, Singapore and Hong Kong. Wow. Listening to you with earplugs in queue of thousands going to Macau this Easter weekend. Go gambling. big thing in China. Like, Chinese people seem to like gambling a lot. I don't know if that's prejudice or racist for me to say that. I just noticed traveling around the world that whenever I was anywhere near a casino, there was generally people who were Chinese around, especially in Africa. And I think that gambling is illegal in mainland China. So Macau, which is the old Portuguese colony, which got independence in 1998, I think. Yeah, they still have casinos. So literally half of China goes to Macau on the holiday weekends to go and gamble. Fantastic, my friend. Enjoy the garden. I went to Spanish supermarket yesterday and the tomatoes, mandarin, lettuce, everything. Brilliant. The train plus Irish ferries from Dublin to London is 47 euro. Something similar return might be useful. Oh, I want to move. I want to move to Ireland. I want to move to Ireland, stay there for a few years, get an Irish passport. I have a bit of a thing for the Irish, I gotta say. I don't know, it's my roots calling me. Anyways, off to Macau then. So thank you very much for the super chats. So something else someone mentioned in the chat, which I do want to talk about, is it is the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Good Friday Agreement coming up, which was signed in 1998 with Benny Ahern and Paisley, Tony Blair, and who was it? Trimble. And Hume, was it? I think so. Anyway, so the Good Friday Agreement, which ended decades of violence, hundreds of people killed on the streets of Northern Ireland, and it allowed people who were from Northern Ireland to identify as Irish or British or both, if they wanted to. This is all about self-ID. Something that some people don't like, but I do. I think that's fair enough. If you want to change your name to whatever you want, then that's fair enough. If you want to get tattoos or you want to get piercings anywhere, I don't have a problem with it. It's your body. Do what you like. If you want to regard yourself as Irish and you're from Belfast, great. You can have an Irish passport. Happy days. If you want to regard yourself as British and you're from Belfast, you can get a British passport. Great. Happy days. If you want both, you can have both, which is probably a good idea at the moment, considering that Ireland's still in the EU and Britain isn't. So Britain can't get you very far. When I was travelling 13 years ago to every country in the world without flying, I had a British passport, and it was the most powerful passport in the world in 2010 when I was travelling, when I was going to Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan and Tajikistan and Turkmenistan and North Korea and into Tibet from Nepal. I'll say that again, into Tibet and China from Nepal with my British passport. I could do that. I don't think I could do that now. So we've slipped down the rankings. I'm in number 18 in the world now because it's just not as valuable. I mean, we used to be able to go and live and work in Europe and that was fine. But now we have to ask permission. And if we want to go to Europe, the continental Europe, we're only allowed to stay there for 90 days in every 180, which is just heartbreaking that we've done this to ourselves. Well, the newspaper owners, who aren't even British most of the time or even don't live in Britain, people like Rupert Murdoch and Lord Rothermere, who I think lives in France or Monaco or something. What they wanted, the will of the newspaper barons, the will of the oligarchs, Brexit. Anyway, but the thing is that our membership of the EU underpinned the Good Friday Agreement. So it was just, there was never a hint that there might be a border on the island of Ireland, because why would there be? We're all part of the single market. We're all part of the European Union. All of our standards on goods and services and how much effluent we can pump into our rivers is the same. Now we've left the EU, we've filled every single river in the country has human waste in it. Every single one. And that's because this government wanted it that way. They want it so you can't go on holiday anywhere in the UK because it's too dangerous. I mean, you have kids splashing about in the water at Skegness or Blackpool and they might get a deadly disease and die. An infection from the sewage in the water. There are surfers down in Cornwall who are having to, surf with their mouths closed, to put it mildly. It's disgusting. So we had the membership of the EU, which was so important, an integral part of the Good Friday Agreement. So much so that the Good Friday Agreement kind of just took it for granted. It was meant as a document between two member states of the European Union. and what to do about this area that both sides had claims over. And both sides had people living in the claimed area who were violently Irish or violently British. And there was a lot of passions on both sides. But I think by 1998, everyone was just absolutely sick of the violence. And, I'm going to give some props to John Major here, because not only did John Major's government facilitate the negotiations at the end of the apartheid regimes in South Africa, it was actually those talks between Thabo Mbeki, obviously Nelson Mandela was still in jail at this time, and the ANC, not the ANC, what are they called? Oh, I've forgotten what the name, the Zulu Party? Oh my God, I've forgotten the name of the old party that F.W. de Klerk was part of. Oh well. Anyway, PW Botha, FW de Klerk. Those negotiations started, and they were held in the UK. They were held at some stately house in the UK. And also, John Major's government was secretly having conversations with the IRA and other outlawed groups to try and resolve the situation, try and get a place that suited everyone. And you know what? It felt like a very... I know it's going to sound a bit glib, and it will. But at the end of a TV show that you really enjoy, that's quite clever. Not one where they just punch the baddie at the end until he stops living. I'm talking about when you're watching something like Star Trek, and there's a clever solution to the problem. The problem's presented itself. The crew go through these trials and tribulations, and then at the end, someone comes up with a really great idea, and they go, "Why don't we do this?" And they solve the problem, not through violence, but from a clever idea. I've always found that really satisfying. As an aspiring screenwriter, I'd rather end something with a really good idea of how to sort this out than just punching it till it goes away, which I think is lazy. And the Good Friday Agreement was that. It really was. It was this great idea. It's only quite a short document, actually. But in it laid out how, if you were from Northern Ireland, you could identify as British or you could identify as Irish. It's up to you. And the violence rapidly died down. There was another bombing, which was kind of the end of the reign of terror, I guess, or the terror regime. I don't know what you want to call it, because there were people on both sides who were just pretty abhorrent. But it got done. It got done. Now we are 25 years later, and the government has completely undermined everything that the Good Friday Agreement stood for, because it was about partnership, brotherhood, sisterhood, communities working together across borders. And we have put those borders up, and we have caused all this trouble. The DUP have now rejected the amendment to the Withdrawal Act, which the Northern Ireland Protocol, which means that there are fewer checks on goods and services going into Northern Ireland if they're not going to leave Northern Ireland. Now, one of the things you got to remember as well is that the UK was actually sued by the EU a couple of years ago. I think, it was sued a couple of years ago. I think the case only got resolved like this year. And the UK's had to pay billions to the EU for allowing substandard Chinese products into the EU single market. And that was when we were a member. So like the EU's looking at us going, I can't really trust this country. And I hate that. I hate that I come from a country, that I live in a country that is now deemed untrustworthy. Our credit rating has gone through the floor. We used to be a AAA star rating with Moody's and Standard & Poor and all those rating agencies. And we've just gone down and down and down under this Tory government. So now the police chief is in Northern Ireland is warning of dissident Republican disorder, which means they're worried about there being a terrorist attack today or over the weekend, and they're on high alert as a result of it. I think the alert status was put up a couple of weeks ago, up to an attack is likely, and this pot has been stirred. It's been stirred on purpose by politicians. Not for ideological reasons, not because they love their country or any of that stuff, no. For money. That's all it is. Grubby money. Scott Benton, lobbying on behalf of, leaking documents to a betting company about laws that we're bringing in about betting. And he's still an MP. He should be in jail. He should be in jail. Never mind losing the whip. He should lose his liberty. That should be a crime. If you did that in the corporate world, if you, say, stole corporate secrets from Coca-Cola, you stole the recipe off Coca-Cola and gave it to Pepsi, pretty sure Coca-Cola would make sure that you were put in a box and you never saw daylight ever again. Why is it different when we say, oh, it's democracy, he was voted in? Yeah, he hadn't committed the crime when he was voted in, or people didn't know about it. So it's a court of human opinion, of people's opinion. No. We have the law. The law is a thing. And we need to respect that. And it should be the same for everyone. No matter if you're an MP or an orange billionaire or just some person on the street, the law should apply equally. Because that's the basis of our society. If someone messes up, then they're punished accordingly. And it should be the same for everyone. Justice is blind. It doesn't care who you are, how famous you are, or how many followers or sycophants or people that you have falling down at your every word you have. It shouldn't make a difference. But unfortunately, we don't live in that world yet. I'm hoping that we will. And when I finished the conversation last night with Katie, I did try and put in so it's all a bit bleak at the moment. Is there anything to think positive about? And Katie said, what I feel as well is the younger people coming up are just so much nicer. They just are. They're nicer than my generation. I'm not being ageist here. They just are. Because they've got friends who are trans, they've got friends who are gay, they've got friends. I couldn't have gay friends in school. Got to understand this, because I grew up under Section 28. So if I did have gay friends, they couldn't really tell anyone. If they told their mates, they'd probably get bullied. If they told the teachers, the teacher by law couldn't talk to them about it. Because of Section 28, you weren't allowed to promote homosexuality. And everything's changed now. Kids growing up in these mixed environments where they're meeting people from all over the world, all walks of life, different religions, different sexualities. It does empower tolerance, and it empowers people to care about each other and the world and the future, whereas the older generations. And then the other good news, hand in hand with that, is that we're seeing in polls that millennials and Gen Z or Gen Z are both, as they're getting older, they're becoming more left-wing, which is remarkable. That's never happened before in political history, as far as we know. Generally speaking, as people get older, they get more conservative. But not anymore, because I think young people have had enough. And I think this only happened quite recently, but now the number of Gen Z and plus millennials of voting age has now outweighed the number of boomers. And that is bad news for conservatives and bad news for Republicans. And that's why they're running around like lunatics at the moment, like just doing absolutely awful, abhorrent things, like bringing in these rules against refugees, putting them in a prison. Oh, it's not a prison. Can they leave? No, it's a prison. Putting refugees in a prison on a boat. What they're doing in America, where they're in Kansas, they want to force children to show adults their genitals in order to take part in sports. Yeah, you heard that right. That's what's happening in America right now by the Republicans. So they're freaking out. They're freaking out. They know this is the last ditch. It's a fire sale. It's a right-wing fire sale, and we're living through that now. Look at the fossil fuel companies, the dirty carbon fuel companies. They're a fire sale as well. They know it's running out. We've hit peak oil. There's not going to be any oil to burn in 100 years' time, or even less than that. So they're trying to make as much money as they can before the technology allows us to make energy through renewables cheaper, which I think we've already hit that. And this is why you see time and time again that the fossil fuel companies are always behind these wizard wheezers, these schemes, this greenwashing BS, where they're saying, oh, carbon credits, yeah, well, you should check your carbon footprint, mate. You want to check your carbon footprint. And all the time, they're putting the blame onto you. They're putting the responsibility onto you. And yes, all together, we can do a little bit for the environment, one by one. But we need these companies and these corporations to get their act together. We need to force them to get their act together, because it's no good wanting an electric car if you can't afford them, because the only electric cars that exist are at least £30,000 to buy. Then you're not going to be able to get an electric car, are you? So we need both sides. It's not just us. We need the corporations. And the only people who can make corporations dance to their will are governments, the EU, trade bodies, trade associations, trading groups around the world. And the fact that there's so much foot dragging over all this, the fossil fuel companies have really kicked their heels in. And I just would say, just keep an eye out for it more than anything. When you're reading an article about how great hydrogen's going to be to power our cars, just have a think about who's paying for that and how much they paid for that snazzy advert with the beautiful computer graphics and the open roads and the hydrogen fuel cars. It just seems bonkers to me, to put it mildly. Massive achievement. And Biden's coming to market. This is about the Good Friday Agreement. Absolutely massive. I mean, and it's one of the things that I would point to as I regard if I was going to write a history book, I'd call the 90s the long decade. I'll say it started in November 1989 and it ended on that September the 11th, 2001. And through this decade, things incrementally got better. We saw nearly every civil war, everyone, and there were dozens, right? Every civil war in Africa kind of fizzle out. We had the Good Friday Agreement, the war in Ukraine, Yugoslavia, nearly. The war in Yugoslavia was over by the end of the decade. Kosovo was being protected by the KFOR troops. There was a lot of reasons to looking positively towards the future. It looked like Al Gore was going to win the presidential election. He had great green credentials. Think about what different world we would be living in right now had Al Gore been the leader of America rather than George W. Bush. And don't say, oh, they're all the same. I think he would have tried to do something about the environment, don't you? Whereas Bush just played golf until September the 11th, and then his popularity went through the roof, so he won the next election unfairly because he didn't deserve to. He was a terrible, terrible president. And we thought, well, it's not going to get much worse than that. And then Trump came along. Oh, my God. But then, from 2001, we had the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, and then we ended that decade with the credit crunch. It was just a terrible, terrible decade. And, yeah. And then, obviously, in the 2010s, feels to me like the lost decade, almost, because I don't know what happened there. It just everything that we had achieved all started going to SHIT, and there was so little we could do about it. And we tried to raise our voice, and our voices weren't heard. And it was a harsh lesson in the reality that we live in a country, we live in a world where if you are born rich, you have so much more power than anyone else. Power to speak. You have much more of a platform. If you don't like the fact that people like you and me are allowed to write things on Twitter insulting celebrities and politicians, as we like to do, you can buy Twitter and you can mess it up and make it terrible, so nobody knows if something's real or something's not, because everyone can buy a blue tick now, and the people who had blue ticks like Gary Lineker have lost them, so you don't even know if that's the real Gary Lineker anymore. Great system. It's almost as though these foreign tyrants from, I don't know, the Arabian Peninsula might have helped to fund Musk's takeover of Twitter in order to stifle free speech. Because it's a lot easier to control the editorial content of a newspaper, of a television channel, Fox News, GB News, Talk TV, than it is to edit to censor the editorial content of a social media site that allows people like you and me to tweet the powerful. They've not had that before. Normal people talking at them, saying things. And you can't get that on Facebook. You can't really get that on YouTube. You can't get that on TikTok, really. If you want to do a direct message to someone in power and say you're doing this wrong, or maybe you're doing it right and I think you're great, whatever that message is, Twitter's the platform to do that on, even though it's one of the smallest social media platforms. And Musk has taken that away from us. The richest man in the world has come and said, no, we don't want that. I don't want to listen to what the plebs have to say. The hoi polloi. This guy's parents owned an emerald mine. An emerald mine. I'll say that again. And they owned an emerald mine back in, when it was still apartheid in South Africa. I think the emerald mine was actually in Zimbabwe or something, but it was at a time when it wasn't great to be a black South African. In fact, if you were black and you were from South Africa in the 1980s, you couldn't call yourself South African. You could only be South African if you were white. That's how cruel and oppressive that system was. And there's a lot of people in charge in America and in the UK right now would probably quite like to go back to that system. This week alone, you've seen not just attacks on refugees coming over from war-torn countries and from oppressive regimes trying to escape. You've also seen there's been talk about Muslim grooming gangs at a time when one of the biggest grooming gangs. I'm using the word grooming. I wouldn't normally say that. I'd normally say what they actually are, but I'm just trying to stay on the right side of monetization here. Those grooming gangs, they arrested one, or they blew one up this week that was absolutely massive. I think it was the biggest one, and everyone in it was white. People from Asia, Pakistanis, do not disproportionately make up these grooming gangs, but they get more exposure. They get more press inches. And our Home Secretary was saying, these singling out Pakistani people and people who are of Pakistani origin are like, oh my God. And that this week there's been stories and reports of people who are Pakistani getting abuse in the streets because of the rhetoric coming out of this disgusting Home Secretary's horrible chinless face. It's just... yeah, she looks like a blobfish. Cathal says, I've seen it suggested the boat could be parked outside Westminster as a second home for MPs. Yeah, that would be good. We should do that when Labour are in charge. We should have it so that there is a hotel in London. It's nice. It's right by Parliament, and that's where MPs who are not from London stay when they're voting. That's it. There is the MP. Because don't forget, there's only 650 MPs, and not all of them come in, right? So maximum 650 rooms, hotel, that's it. And make it nice. I'm not saying make it horrible, but make it pleasant for them. Bump up their salaries and say you can't have a second job. That's it. I'll pay politicians more so they don't feel like they need a second job and have a hotel in London where they stay when they're voting. The fact that we don't do that, the fact that they take so much money. Cruella Braverman, the chinless blobfish woman, she claimed £25,000 off the taxpayer to pay for her heating bill while she was staying with her parents. £25,000. God, I could do with that money right now. Anyway, I wouldn't have to wear 2 hoodies to do my show and my beanie. I could put my normal hat back on. I'd like to do that, but my ears get too cold. Graham, in Spain, the government add the subject of sexual education in the primary school on the academic curriculum. Good. I mean, there is a problem when a child doesn't understand what is being done or, what people are talking about or whatever. And it can put them into a potentially dangerous predicament. And these ideas that you teach children about that kind of stuff at a too young an age, that the kids will, it will ruin their childhood. But you know what really ruins childhood? Adults taking advantage of the fact that children don't know what's going on in that respect. Again, don't want to get demonetized, don't want to get too heavy, don't want to talk about this too much. But yeah, I think knowledge is power. And I'm sure what they're teaching in primary schools isn't the actual they're not sitting down and watching porn. I think that it's going to be, quite, nothing on those lines. I mean, I've read some really mad stuff that the Republicans in America have been coming out with, and maybe some conservatives over here, about what children are being educated in, and it's like, no, they're really not. They're not. No one's teaching that. No one's. And this is the thing. Like, there's so many on the right who just make up stuff. They just make critical race theory. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing. You can't get a degree in critical race theory. It doesn't exist. You can study it maybe at university as a part of a course on the history of America, and you'd do it as a module, like you'd study communism if you're doing politics. Or do you know what I mean? It's like they're not teaching primary school kids critical race. It was just made up by someone who just a Republican who said, right, we need the latest wizardries, we need the latest thing to have a laugh about, and hang over the evil Democrats that are teaching critical race theory, even though it doesn't mean anything. Like woke doesn't mean anything. I mean, it does mean something. It's a word that came about for African Americans to mean someone who is awake to the injustices in the world. Yeah, those buggers. But yeah, it's become now anything I don't like is woke. Oh, that's a bit woke. Oh, it's all woke. Oh, riding the bike, that's woke. This is woke. And it's just like, oh my God, I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired. They make an enemy and they invent one. It's a straw man. No one's saying all this. No one's saying all this stuff that they say we're saying. Nobody wants to have a world in which children are forced to watch hardcore porn. Do you know what I mean? That's not happening, and it never will happen. But the right wing are totally based on the politics of fear. That's it. It is what they get their votes for. They make people scared. They're like, oh, you better vote for us, or you're all gonna get these lefties. They'll be doing things that are bad. But also, it's like the politics of bullying, of trying to pick on people, pick a different minority, pick a different group that you don't like, and we'll pick on them. Whether it's Jeremy Clarkson going on about cyclists, or whether it's someone J.K. Rowling going on about trans people. They've just got to pick someone to pick on, and it's bullying and it's horrible. And I'm just hoping that in the future we'll just look back at this time and just go, what the hell? And then we just blame the lead in the pipes. Cathal, super chat, €5. Thank you very much, Cathal. Great weekend all. No swearing, and the efforts it's requiring, still no monetization. I know. Well, I can only monetize the videos after I've done them, so I don't think they go out monetized live. Talking about race, the Royals have admitted what they many already know regarding their involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. Yes, I was actually going to point this out because I brought it up on my screen to talk about the Royals and the fact that the cost of the crown and just how much money the Royals have, which was something that was kind of suppressed a bit while the Queen was still alive, but now she's gone. It's like all bets are off. And we're like, well, no, why are we paying for this institution to have this mad coronation when they could literally pay for it themselves? Woke means awareness of the systemic judgment, injustices present in society, and they need to do something about them. Republicans are aware, but they thrive on those injustices. Indeed they do. Right, I'm gonna call it a day. I'm about to, hopefully, if they're not too hungover, I'm gonna be filming a episode of The Intersection, which is a new show that's going to be on this channel, and filming that with Super Tansky and Hannah Janes in 11 o'clock, so 40 minutes. It's time to make myself another cup of tea. I will be back on Monday at 9:30. I might be here in Durham. I might be elsewhere. I might be somewhere, but I'll bring my green screen with me, and I'll definitely be broadcasting. Phil Morehouse might be stepping in for me next week, if he can. So look out for that. It might not just be me every morning. We'll hopefully have some different guest presenters talking about what's on the news and responding to your comments. So keep up for that. And yes, otherwise, oh, hello. Okay, right. I'm gonna have to call it a day. I'm getting told leaving. So thank you very, very much for watching, and I'll leave you with a list of our wonderful patrons. If you want to add your name to the list, head over to patreon.com/Labour Social. So until then, take care. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.